I'm John Riggins. I used to run with my legs. Now, I run with my mouth.
We're going to bring in two experts now because...
These are the godfathers of fantasy football.
Yeah. You got Peter Schoenke and Paul Charchian. I've known Charch for many years, and these guys are the gurus. And there's a pretty cool thing going on tonight at virtualfantasyconvention.com. And it's a fantasy football convention tonight because everybody's on tightened and shortened deadlines this year because of the lockout, the volume of player movement and free agents and the rookies and what have you. So let's welcome in Paul Charchian and Peter Schoenke. What's happening, guys?
Hey, how you doing?
Hello.
Peter, Paul, good to have you on. Where's Mary? I know you've heard that 1,000 times. I just had to get it in, though. I couldn't resist. Well, listen, since you guys have been doing the fantasy football, is this the first time you've run into a situation such as, what's been put upon everybody who plays it? With the lockout and everybody all of a sudden with a bunch of free agents scrambling going to new teams?
Yeah, it's definitely been hectic for sure. And most the commissioners that have got all their things lined up ahead of time have got everything ready to go in June and July, but you couldn't do that this year. So it's been kind of a rush to the finish for everybody. And that includes all the players out there who are trying to make heads or tails of all the free agency stuff. You can't buy magazines this year. So yeah, it's been a really different off season this year, and for fantasy players, there's a whole unique set of challenges in a lot of ways.
Paul, let me ask this question to you. For a guy that really, finds himself, pinched here, is there any, advice that you guys have come up with that they can either go online, a place to get information? How do you kind of get rid of the anxiety as you approach the fantasy season?
Well, I'll throw this over to Peter because his website is really built around fantasy advice. Rotowire.com. It's outstanding. It's won tons of awards in our industry for writing, and so. Peter, I will defer to you on that.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, you can definitely check out our site. You can go to rotowire.com/trial, get a free 10-day trial, up-to-date cheat sheets, player news, rankings, pretty much just everything you need as you go into your draft. But even if you're not going to use our site, I mean, the main advice I'd have would be just, get a really good updated cheat sheet, and maybe look all the depth charts, so you just kind of know all the players in the player pool, because, once you get into a draft and you get down to those last couple of rounds, sometimes you're just scrambling for picks, and if you're just organized going into the draft, it'll pay big dividends.
And John, you're a player for years. You know what it's like when you miss a whole off season. You got a bunch of rookies who are coming in trying to get maybe a new offense installed, new coaches. You've got a rookie receiver trying to catch passes from a quarterback, and they weren't able to work out all off season. I think from a strategy standpoint, there's some real risk in trying to go with rookies, especially that are coming into situations with a lot of variables. Maybe a new coach, new offensive coordinator, new system.
Well, that's a great place to start because I believe technically there's a couple of guys that took over and maintained their job, but there's 8 new basically rookie head coaches. Are you saying that those are situations where, based on the team, that you might be a little bit nervous about if you were going to play some of the players and or defenses on those teams?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. And there's going to be other people I'm going to let draft. Let's take A.J. Green as one example, right? So A.J. Green looks like a really talented kid. He's the top part of the NFL draft, but he goes in a situation where he's got to try to learn a pro-style offense with no offseason and a quarterback who he doesn't even know who his starting quarterback's going to be yet. And there's a lot working against, that's one kid in particular who I don't trust him if he's going to be trying to catch wobblers from Andy Dalton, who's learning on the job while he's learning on the job.
Well, when you have the guys that that have been in the league and say the free agents, and this is something I was wondering. I mean, because it doesn't really make any difference what team they end up on, or does it, based on the kind of, say, if it's an offensive player, particularly obviously a skill position player, does that team would you have had to have waited till you find out what team they're going to, or if you have a good feeling about an individual, he's still your guy?
It matters in fantasy football because fantasy football is all about how many yards and stats they accumulate. So you want to get guys who have clear jobs, are going to get a lot of touches, a lot of carries, a lot of balls thrown their way. So actually, it was kind of a disappointing free agency because some of the guys that everybody was hoping to land on teams like D'Angelo Williams, who re-signed with Carolina, if he would have landed in Denver or some other team where he would have been the clear number one back, that would have made a huge fantasy impact. But instead, he's back in Carolina. He's sharing the job with John Jonathan Stewart, and then for fantasy purposes, that kind of mutes his value. Maybe in real world football, it's good to have two backs like that, but fantasy, you kind of want a guy who's a number one and going to get the ball all the time.
You just blew up my theory, because I was hoping to sneak in D'Angelo Williams because they weren't going to put so much pressure on Cam Newton, and maybe it would be a little bit more run intensive in Carolina. So you would sort of lean against that because he's splitting time with Jonathan Stewart?
Well, I mean, he's a huge talent, and just a couple years ago, he won a lot of people's fantasy Super Bowls when he won a huge run at the end of the season, scored a lot of touchdowns. But in these backfields where they split carries, even though D'Angelo Williams is supremely talented, he's just not going to get as many opportunities as, say, an Adrian Peterson, who's going to get the ball, probably first, second, third, fourth down.
Yeah.
So.
All right, we're joined by Peter Schoenke, president of RotoWire, and Paul Charchian, president of the Fantasy Sports Trade Association and founder of LeagueSafe.com. And you guys have paired up with MyFantasyLeague.com about tonight's event. Tell us what this event is tonight. How it can help folks.
The event tonight works a little like this. It's sort of like if we were, at a downtown D.C. ballroom in a hotel or a convention center, and you had a bunch of speakers talking about fantasy football. But instead of having to go anywhere, you can do this right from your computer. We'll be on webcam. You can watch us, ask us questions, and listen to a bunch of fantasy experts talk about their favorite draft strategies, the key players they like, who they don't like, sleepers and busts, and schedule analysis, and all the kind of really deep, in-depth stuff that goes, really, really applies to really the hardcore guys out there. And when you go to virtualfantasyconvention.com, you're able to do this from your underwear in your living room if you want to. And that's part of the joy of this is it's really, really easy. You don't have to get up off the couch, and you can head over to this and take a look and try to get yourself all ready for draft day without having to go out of the house.
The Church, as long as you're not in your underwear, I think we're going to be fine.
I make no promises about that.
Oh, you hear that, ladies? By the way, what time and how long will it last tonight? When does it start?
It is 8 o'clock Eastern, and we're probably going to log in around 3 hours for this. So this is a lot of content.
That's virtualfantasyconvention.com. Check it out tonight. And you guys are talking about the draft panic that is, and I know that you have been seeing an influx of traffic on your respective websites or whatever. So this is a pretty cool deal. We'll have to check it out tonight.
By the way, guys, when with what do we got, about 3 weeks before the regular season begins, approximately, give or take?
September 11th, Sunday is the full action, and then that Thursday night is the kickoff.
So, are there, to you guys' knowledge, are there a lot of leagues that have already held their drafts, or is this something now that when will the bulk of this activity take place?
Pretty much nonstop between now and opening day, but the next 2 weekends are really big. I mean, that's probably when the bulk of the drafts happen.
All right, well, that's virtualfantasyconvention.com. Paul and Peter and Paul, thanks for checking in on the John Riggins Show, and we invite everybody to check that out tonight. You've got one tonight and then another one a week from tonight on August 25th. That's virtualfantasyconvention.com.